And being authentic to me means being true to the full range of my feelings. But when I'm truthful about it, that connects me like a root going into the soil. It connects me to the rest of life.
Hello, friends. Welcome. Welcome to Sounds True 1. In this episode of Insights at the Edge, we have with us a beloved poet, storyteller, spiritual teacher, and friend, Mark Nepo. Let me tell you a little bit about Mark. He's been called, you ready for this? One of the finest spiritual guides of our time. And I think it's true. In his 30s, Mark was diagnosed with a rare form of lymphoma, a struggle which helped to form his philosophy of experiencing life fully while staying in relationship to an unknowable future. Mark's the author of more than 20 books and 16 audio projects, many with Sounds True. He's the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Book of Awakening, and he's now released a new collection of his poetry. It's called The Half-Life of Angels, 3 books of poems. And we're here celebrating the release of The Half-Life of Angels. And with that, Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Tami. It's so wonderful to be with you. I'm so excited about. I remember a few years ago talking to you about when this was first starting to percolate in me to put this book together. And though I've published so many books, been blessed, I really feel close to this one.
I have to say, really... Mark, you say that about every one of your book children, and fair enough, and for good reason. And you have such a special gift at coming up with titles for your work. I love the titles, and I'm curious to know, one, how you come up with the title, and then tell us a bit about this title, The Half-Life of Angels.
So the titles are very intuitive. After I've been in relationship with whatever the book is about, at some point an image or a feeling, something will just kind of ring more true than everything else. And it's almost like finding an anchor. And I know that's it. And with this one, this came before I had any sense of what it meant. I just knew The Half-Life of Angels, that was it. And as I finished putting the book together, I realized and this is so much what the poems are for me. They ring true, and then they become my teachers. And I have to stay in relationship to understand what it is I am to learn. And I've discovered more as I go on that this creative process is really the introspective process. I just happen to write it down. So The Half-Life of Angels is really that spark of becoming, of spirit, and we know the traditional God and Adam and Michelangelo on the Sistine Chapel, that little space. It's like the synapse of spirit that sparks of life force between all things. That's kind of the half-life of angels. And so all the poems in these 3 books, in this one volume, explore and affirm that mysterious spark of becoming.
Now, Mark, you said something really interesting, that, you received the title, if you will, and you weren't even sure what it meant when it first came to you. And I had a moment of like, what? So he's like writing like a scribe. And, I think people have different explanations for this kind of thing. Like if they're engaging in some kind of automatic writing or something like that. And some people say, oh, that was a guide. It was outside of me. I didn't even know what it was. But you don't really use that language. How do you understand it? Like you received a title, you didn't create it from your sort of discursive mind. Something else was happening.
So I feel like for me, I'm not channeling. but I am not the sole creator either. That it's all about relationship. I am in relationship through my authenticity with everything that's not me. And I feel like this has taught me in my own life that our authenticity is how we clean out the conduit of who we are so we can connect with spirit and with others. And so I like to say I retrieve poems and books. I'm not channeling, I'm not a blank conduit, but I'm not the, this is the fallacy of the West is, we want to be little gods. Oh, I created out of nothing. Well, it's not that either. That through this relationship, I am open enough. Another kind of image that comes to me is like an inlet, that the greater water flows through an inlet and then it can irrigate the land on the land side of the inlet. Well, if that inlet is blocked with debris and stones, nothing gets through. And our authenticity cleans out the inlet that is us, each soul. And then we are informed by the rest of life and we grow for it.
Now, this notion of our authenticity, that's what's meeting everything that's not me. That's what you said. And I had a moment like, what does that mean exactly? It's my authenticity. Like, how do I know that I'm resting in my quote unquote authenticity or
Well,
being
and
in my
it makes me
authenticity?
think, when you use the word rest, it makes me think of, in the Buddhist sense of faith, I think the word is sadha, which means resting the heart in what is true. So what does that mean for me? So that means for me that I try to move at the pace of what is real. And being authentic to me means being true to the full range of my feelings. Whatever that might be. I might be afraid, I might be confused, I might be in pain. But when I'm truthful about it, that connects me like a root going into the soil. It connects me to the rest of life. And then I get strength from that. And I get clarity from that. And if I am not authentic, I get clogged up. I mean, it's also interesting that in ancient Chinese, the closest word to translate for sin is not evil, it's opaqueness. That it's when we're blocked from seeing or blocked from being true. And so the way, our being authentic, also from the Greek, it means the mark of the hands. So being authentic is how the heart comes into the hands, how inner comes into the world, how, if I love you and you fall down in front of me, well, I'm trying to prevent your fall or pick you up. And so what's in here comes out here. And that's being congruent. I'm not just saying I love you. When you fall, I'm showing I love you.
The mark of the hands.
Hands.
I find that so beautiful. Mark Nepo, that's so beautiful. And in coming to our conversation, I realized the question I really wanted to ask you about. Yes, I want to hear and have our listeners hear some of the gorgeous poetry in the half-life of angels. And also I want to talk more about the process of writing poetry for you. But the question that lived in my heart in coming to this conversation has to do with the heart. And what I wanted to know is, how do you return to your heart and deepen your sense of residing in the heart when you find yourself outside of that experience? Because you're talking here about the heart flowing through our hands. And I think this
Yeah.
is what I feel in you and your work. And just to say a little bit more, sometimes people are authentic, but there doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of heart in it, meaning they're authentic. They're
Hmm.
like just telling you what the heck's going on, and they're venting and all of this. But there's something different about this quality of heart flowing through the hands. And that's what I want to hear more about.
Yeah. So I feel like I have learned, and I could say it this way, that mysteriously there's been a handful of times in my life, like all of us, when my heart's been shattered, when and I had no idea how I was going to move forward or how it would be put back together. And I was sharing, I recently turned 72, so far, maybe it'll be different next time, but so far I can report mysteriously every time, not only has my heart come back together, it's been larger, stronger, gentler, and more loving. Now, I don't exactly know how that works, but I am a student, a lifelong student of that mystery. And I think that, so now to me, I think all of us, you know, the harshness of life pushes us away. You know, fear and pain make us tighten. And then whatever our practice is, our job then is to open when we tighten and to lean in when we're pushed back. And so there is a powerful beauty in admitting the truth of whatever I'm going through, even if I'm in pain, that opens up my heart again. You know, if I'm sad and I refuse it, things get worse. And if I say, oh, I don't want to be sad, well, mostly that's happened because I already am. And so I need to admit it. And the word admit both means to confess or acknowledge, but it also means let in, admit. So when I am truthful about my feelings, I am not only acknowledging the beauty of what is, even if it's difficult, but then I'm also letting in other life. And so when I am confused or troubled or in any way, because I think we all move because we're human, I'm committed to being wholehearted. And of course, there are times I'm half-hearted. I commit to being centered. And of course, there's times I'm off-centered. So much of the heart helps us return. So much of any practice to me is a practice of return. And so if I'm confused, I'm sitting here in my study, then or I'm in pain or in fear, I try to hold nothing back, open my heart, and give my heart's attention to the nearest piece of life until it becomes my teacher. And that always makes me more intimate with life, and it connects me to more resources.
So, Mark, tell me about that. Putting your attention on the nearest piece of life. Are you saying like the nearest piece of life
Yeah, I'm
could
sort of
be
like a fly on the window, like
okay.
or the leaf outside here on this tree that's just starting to bud because it's spring, or all of a sudden Zuzu, you know, my dog is here and I'm stuck looking at her golden lashes for 5 minutes. You know, so whatever it might be, and this goes to that synapse, that spark of becoming, the half-life of angels that's a placeholder for, is when we are authentic and our heart is open, it's like when wires connect and then electricity comes through. That's how we connect to the network of life force that flows through all relationship. And we can find these things in the simplest places. You know, I was just mentioning, this is a quick story, that when I was recently at the Modern Elder Academy down in Mexico, this wonderful place, and just before the retreat started in the morning, it was starting at night, I was walking on the beach, and one of the participants was walking, and she came over, and she said, "I know we're not starting. I don't want to intrude. Can I ask you something?" I said, "Sure, sure." She said, "Well, this thing just happened on the beach, and I don't know how to feel about it," which I love. That was her. I don't know how to feel about it. Like, that's a beautiful openness. And here's this piece of life that give our attention. So she was walking on the beach, and there was a sizable fish that had been washed up on the surf. And she was like, can I save it? And if I don't, will it just become part of the food chain? And she found a piece of driftwood. She put it back in the surf, and she walked another 5 minutes, and there was another one. And she said, "I don't know how to feel about this." And so there's an example of a piece of life, giving your attention fully. And then she reached in relationship to another, and together we explored it. And what came from that exploration from my heart was, optimists or idealists say we got to save every fish. And pessimists say, you're not going to save every fish, so why bother? But I think the beauty of this spark of becoming, of this commitment to life, is we're not here to save every fish, and we're not here to turn away. We're here to save the one fish in front of us and keep going.